This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to District 25 Community Education Council Superintendent Candidate Town Hall Meeting. Tonight, you will meet the superintendent candidates. My name is Wendy Yu, and I am the current acting president for on the Community Education Council for District 25, and I will be your host this evening. At this time, I will introduce the interpreters. It is important that our community is able to participate tonight, and we are very grateful to our interpreters who are here with us on separate lines. Liliana Melendez is one of our Spanish interpreters. Liliana.
Hi, good afternoon. I will be your Spanish interpreter for tonight. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Liliana Meléndez. Yo voy a ser su intérprete el día de hoy. Para poder escuchar esta grabación en español, usted puede llamar a lo que es el 1-888-475-4499 e ingresar la clave 735-255-0102 y clave numeral. Gracias.
Thank you. And we also have a Chinese Mandarin interpreters, Ms. Xi Fang.
Yes, good evening. Allow me to introduce the phone line. 大家晚上好，今天晚上需要说中文的家长，请拨打电话877-853-5257，输入会议 ID 656-297-5262，井号键。再说一次，需要说中文的家长，请拨打电话877-853-5257，然后输入会议 ID 656-297-5262，井号键。当你接通电话之后，请记得要关闭和静音你在电脑上的声音和话筒，然后记得要关闭你在手机上的话筒，这样可以把背景噪音降到最小，不影响工作。谢谢。Thank you, I'm done. You may proceed.
Thank you very much. Again, welcome to tonight's town hall. Welcome, Mr. Michael D'Antona and our other candidate, Ms. Christian Hernandez. Again, my name is Wendy Yu. I'm the current president of CEC 25. At this time, I will introduce my other fellow members. Eden Rubenstein, would you like to say a few words? Eden, you're muted.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute. Good evening, guys. My name is Eden Rubenstein. I'm the first vice president for our CEC, and I am looking forward to speaking with you all tonight.
Thank you, Eden. Joseph Chow.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Chow. I'm a second-term CEC member. Welcome to our meeting.
Bob Wazorek.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Wazorek. This is my first term in the CEC. I'm the recording secretary. Pleased to be here and participate in this process.
Thank you. Shirley Lee.
Good evening, parents, teachers, and community members. My name is Sung-eun Shirley Lee. I am the second vice president of CEC 25, and thank you for your time. And I'm very grateful to be a part of this town hall meeting today.
Thank you. John Stewart.
Hi, good evening, everybody. John Stewart. I'm first term CEC member, the borough president appointee. I look forward to hearing from everybody tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Catherine St. Pierre.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Catherine St. Pierre. This is my first term on the CEC, and we are looking forward to what everyone has to say tonight. So welcome.
Alvin Hung. Is Alvin on? Okay, we'll come back to him. Is Mr. Frank Chow? Okay. Also, we have tonight from the President's Council is Ms. Rachel Boltadano. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Good, Wendy. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is Rachel Baltadano. I am currently the president of the District 25 President's Council.
This is my first year as president of the President's Council and my second year as a president at the PSIS 499 in District 25. Look forward to everyone's participation this evening.
Thank you. And from the District Parent Advisory Council, Christopher Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, if you're on. All right. Okay, in that case, we will jump right in. So at this time, I will proceed with the prompt questions for both candidates. The question is as follows. Can you provide information about your experience and background that has prepared you for the superintendent position and what the community could expect from you as a leader? Also, how would you engage all stakeholders in decision making for the district? Mr. D'Antona, you may go first. You have 5 to 7 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Ms. Yu, I'm not sure, is there, I know we were asked to create a presentation and that someone would be sharing it, or is that something that I will be doing? Okay, perfect, thank you. Good evening to all of our CEC members, President's Council, DPAC President, and to all of our community members that are on with us tonight. I'm Dr. Mike D'Antona. I am currently the interim acting superintendent here in District 25. Pleasure to be here with all of you this evening and give me an opportunity to share a little bit about my leadership and my candidacy for this role as superintendent for this wonderful district. So next slide, please. I always start with talking about my family. My family is super important to me, and you'll see my wife there on the left, my daughter in the middle, Emily, and Matthew on the right. Anytime I talk about education, those are the ones that are often come to my mind first, as they played a major role in who I am, not only as a parent, obviously, but as an educator. I've been an educator in New York City public school system for 26 years, served as an elementary school teacher, middle school AP, middle school principal, network leader, deputy superintendent, and now interim acting superintendent for District 25. Earned my doctorate at St. John's University in 2015. Big fan of Peter Senge. If you don't know who he is, he's an amazing theorist around organizational leadership. Big fan of sports, just so that everyone knows, Islanders, Knicks, Jets, Yankees, and super proud of my family, super proud of my kids. Emily, my 14-year-old, big fan of volleyball and softball. Matthew, 12 years old, loves basketball, baseball. And I share that not because you need to know that they are into sports. I share that for you to know that for me as a superintendent, it's important that we are providing an opportunity for our kids to have a true experience in our schools. And that includes opportunities in the world of athletics. So next slide. Our district community, we've been built around this particular mindset, around strong roots, strong schools. From many roots growing as one community, the idea around empowering our learners, embracing the differences that we have and providing equitable access and opportunity for all. And next slide. And that's built around these particular areas that I value as a leader. Individual and collective learning, super important to me. You can't grow as a group unless you grow individually. Routine use of data and transparency of information for families and schools. Engagement of cycles of learning to support professional growth. Strategic professional learning supports for our school leaders and staff to support student needs. Meaningful partnerships with our families from early childhood all the way through our middle school years, who we serve, to provide that pathway towards college and career readiness. Fostering that space of excellence by providing opportunities for empowerment, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, student ownership. Integrating the expectations around social emotional learning, super important, especially today, and inclusive of equity-based practices to support academic learning. And then supporting an asset-based type of mindset in terms of our approach to instruction, thinking through cultural differences, inclusive of race, ethnicities, language, and so on. Next slide, please. So my mindset is very much around this idea of stronger. So strong roots, strong schools. led me to the space of Stronger and how we're using that data that we've gathered to make really important decisions. And the two that I really lean in on are the last two parts of this Stronger space. Evaluating and studying and responding with action. Really super important for us in our district, in District 25, to really make sure that we understand what's going on with our kids and then respond accordingly. And that ranges in terms of the data that we look at, from process, performance, demographic, and perception. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Next slide. Oh, wrong way. So in terms of my professional experience, nope, other way. There we go. Professional experiences. Currently interim acting superintendent for the district. I supervise 34 schools, elementary, middle, K to 8, and 2 pre-K centers here in the district. Manage and support, supervise 22 team members, building capacity for our folks. Particularly the two big things that I've been managing this year is around the implementation of a new reading curriculum in HMH into reading, as well as into literature for our middle school, as well as a new Mind Up social emotional learning program. I served as the deputy superintendent here in the district for 8 years. And prior to that, I was a New York City network leader. My roles as a deputy included the space of serving as a superintendent's designee to engage in the evaluation process, as well as a manager of data. Those of you who know me know that I'm pretty synonymous with the idea of using information to support decisions. I was a principal at an AP, managed a $10 million+ budget, supported programming, all the things along those lines. My school was a middle school of 1,600 children, over 100 staff. And I was a teacher in K to 6 for science and technology. I was a chapter leader in my day as a teacher as well. And I developed and facilitated a variety of different after-school programs as a teacher too. Next slide. Next slide. Yep, one more. Thanks. So in terms of partnering with the community, one of the things that I value most is making sure that I have an opportunity to connect with those that I work with. And that includes the range of the folks that support a school system, our local elected officials, our community education council, our president's council, our students, staff, and parents. Part of my work was around engaging in this idea of a listening and learning tour, where I visited a series of schools across the district, including our local elected officials, to gather feedback in the space of getting an understanding of what is it we do well here in District 25, what is it that we still need to work on, and then use that information to support next steps as a district team. And those included facilitating events and activities that align with our priorities and the city priorities, including the New York City Reads process, where we promoted family events. We had 1,000 folks come out to our local parks, where we were able to give out books, upwards of 10,000 books at one event. District Family Night, special educational information learning series that we provided, social emotional learning events, cyberbullying. All of those things came from outreach to our constituents so that we can provide those clear next steps for our families, staff, and leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Dantona. Now we turn to Christian Hernandez. I will repeat the questions again. The question is, can you provide information about your experience and background that has prepared you for the superintendent position, and what the community could expect from you as a leader? Also,
Sure.
How would you engage all stakeholders in decision-making for the district?
Of course. And I first want to start as the external candidate. I want to first and foremost thank you guys for giving me this opportunity, and great job to interim acting Superintendent Daytona. I appreciate this opportunity tonight. My name is Christian Marie Hernandez. Hello, hola, ni hao. Please, next slide. I want to first take you on my journey in a very short amount of time. but I did get my start in the New York City Department of Education, which I now know is renamed to the New York City Public School System. I began my teaching career as a high school teacher at Norman Thomas on 33rd and Park Avenue. I was a teacher of business, so marketing, accounting, sports marketing, introduction to occupations, a lot of those CTE courses that are making their way back for, you know, really tying into 21st century skills. I then transitioned over to the South Bronx, where I spent more than a decade at Health Opportunities High School. This is a unique combo. I think I was the only business and PE teacher, as PE is usually partnered with health. I was a teacher, a dean of students, a coordinator of student activities, a stunt coach, which is similar to cheerleading, a dance coach, and a PSAL athletic director. I was able to build that athletic program from the ground up, beginning with girls basketball, and after 4 years, ending with 15 varsity teams that were a game changer for our cohort 4- and 6-year graduation rate, partnering with my principal at the time. I then had a brief stint as an instructional coach serving districts 8, 10, 11, and 12 in the Bronx, carrying the former mayoral initiative for equity and excellence in wellness. And then I left the New York City system. I headed up about 50 miles north to Brewster, New York, where I've been serving for 8 years, both in the assistant principal seat and the principal seat. And that leads me here. It's 21 years in the making. It's going quickly. I am a wife, a dog mom. I am bilingual. I speak English and Spanish, bicultural, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a first-gen college graduate. I'm 3 credits shy of finishing my doctorate. It should be completed by the end of this summer. And I'm going to segue to my next slide. What would make me a great leader for District 25? I bring in a plethora of experience. 14.5 years in the classroom in New York City, so I know what it takes. I was a Big Apple Teacher Award nominee at one point. I still have that framed in my office. 12 years in administrative roles, 4 years as an AD, 5 years as an AP. This is my 3rd year as a principal, 8 years total in my building. I'm very well versed in the clear vision for D25 and New York City laid out by Chancellor Banks, which I share his commitment to literacy. It is a social justice issue. I have a lot of experience leading families, students and families on various committees. I'd like to share some of those. I co-chaired the Social Emotional Learning Committee during the pandemic and after the pandemic with my deputy superintendent, the ENL advisory team, bringing equity into human resources, building a multi-tiered support system that is comprehensive and really umbrellas academic interventions, SEL and PBIS, and this is MTSS for all. This is really the system that drives equity because you're seeing every student, and this is interrupting the wait to fail model. And it is also for the accelerated student, the students fighting to stay in honors that may not make whatever benchmark they're supposed to be. And it is for the most struggling students. So it meets every student where they're at. And finally, I'm a big solicitor of feedback. Some of the best feedback I've gotten as a school leader is from my students through the Panorama survey and from my parents. And I really believe that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We're supposed to listen and really to be able to see from the balcony. So that's really, really important that, you know, I become familiar with the perspectives of the families in Whitestone, in Flushing, and in College Point. Just a fun fact about me, I frequented Queens throughout my entire adolescence. I grew up on Long Island. You could find me at Shea Stadium as a kid, on Jamaica Avenue shopping, at the College Point movie theater, in Whitestone with family and friends that I have and still have there. So I'm very familiar with Queens. I think D25, you guys have built just a top-notch system. And I'm a firm believer, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Look at what we need to enhance And, in terms of improvements, you want to partner those top-notch leaders, those master AP and principals to really get out there and share their best practices of leadership. Same thing with teachers. It's all about sharing information and really uplifting those who may have some struggles in their building. I'm a leader that believes in affirming all students. Every child should be seen, heard, affirmed, safe, challenged, and prepared for post-secondary success. That means that every child should read by 3rd grade, because that's what sets them up for success. That is what changes generation. That's generational success. Those first-gen students like me, my father only graduated only moved up from the 8th grade. So, I'm right on the cusp of earning my doctorate, and that's one generational change. So that is what I'm committed to: equity and opportunities for all students.
Thank you so much. Both candidates gave great answers to the question. I now want to turn to President's Council, Rachel Bolton-Dono, to give her questions, and then we will move next to our CEC members. Rachel?
Thank you, Wendy. My question is, as Dr. Mike just mentioned, the mission statement of District 25 is strong roots, strong schools. As superintendent, how would you continue to keep that front and center in the district?
For this question, we would like Christian Hernandez to go first, and then Dr. Dantona.
Yes, I'd like to answer. First and foremost, I love the symbolic branding of the tree and the heart in the middle, and roots anchor us all right into the earth, and it doesn't get stronger than that. Empowering learners, right? Again, it's meeting every child where they're at and having a great system that's going to see every child. Embracing differences. This is where inclusivity is key. So you want to create an environment that is representative of the students in front of you. So being that this is a demographic, there are pockets, it depends on which district, but I'm very familiar with the demographic. You can see it here tonight with the interpreters in Spanish and Mandarin. And you want to make sure that our children are represented deeper than just cultural celebrations. That's the easy work. That is the superficial work. You want to make sure that our children are represented in literature, that there are high expectations for all. It doesn't matter if you're learning a 2nd or 3rd language, or if you're a student with an IEP, okay? It's the same high expectation for all. I am well versed in the New York State culturally responsive sustaining framework, and this really is the guidance from New York State around how to embrace differences. And I've done that boots on the ground work, that really hard against the current equity work. But again, it's for all students. And again, creating opportunities. This achievement gap can be crushed. I have a sister leading a blue ribbon elementary school in Brooklyn, PS 249. She's the assistant principal there. And it doesn't matter, right? She's in a neighborhood that has a lower socioeconomic status. They have crushed this myth that this achievement gap needs to exist. And you do this with highly effective teaching and highly effective leadership and partnering with your families, hearing what they need. I'm big into branding. I was a marketing major undergrad, so I love the tree and the roots. And I think that branding is so key. And again, if it's not broken, don't fix it. District 25 has an amazing reputation. So it's about enhancing it and being innovative and seeing down the line, right? We have to be visionary. What's coming next? Getting ahead of the curve. How do we give District 25 students that advantage to go out in the real world and really crush it? So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Mike, do you need the question repeated?
No, I think I'm okay.
You may go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a really, really great question. And when I think about this space of strong roots, strong schools, it means a variety of different things. But most importantly, it's about building strong foundations for our kids academically, strong foundations for our kids social, emotional, learning wise, and strong foundations for our staff, our leaders, and our families. So it's about how do we continue to organize around that. And for me, this school year has been very much about building those strong foundations for our kids as readers, building through programs like Hegarty, Foundations, and our new literacy program in HMH. Much of our work has been grounded this year around building those strong roots for our staff, building those strong roots for our leaders, so that they are equipped to build those strong roots for our kids. So part of that work means that as we've gone through this year, we've done a lot of learning. And one of my expectations around, moving forward as a district is from that learning, how do we take ourselves to that next layer and that next step in terms of improvement? And from that space of strong foundations and that title from many roots growing as one community, it's about how do we engage all of our stakeholders inside of this process. So what I have done and will continue to do is create opportunities for our community members to get into schools. So from our principals and our assistant principals and our teachers, getting not only into classrooms in their own building, but spreading that space out into other buildings where they have an opportunity to learn around the experiences of their colleagues and how implementation of those programs is influencing the outcomes for our children. So really digging deep into what that information is that we have and how do we use it to continue to support those next steps, which for us will be involved in expanding beyond that space of what we've already learned and digging more into explicit instruction as we move into next school year as a community, because that's where we need to build after we've learned how to implement the HMH program. Now it's around tidying up that space so that we're more equipped to grow. In terms of really growing in the place of empowering our learners, the Civics for All work is an amazing part of District 25. Having opportunities to listen to our kids as they create soapbox speeches, as they participate in participatory budgeting in their buildings, it becomes organizing for that so that we can more routinely hear from our kids at events, even like our CEC meetings, our President's Council meetings, so that our kids are front and center because their voice has a great deal of power, including things like the development of a new learning, outdoor learning environment out in a school, or even a new traffic light as they connected with a local elected official. So to me, when we're thinking about empowering our learners, and it's about giving them that opportunity to have a voice and using that voice for something productive and authentic. In terms of embracing differences, one of the things that for me will be an ongoing space of learning and growth is that breaking down of information within the context of the subgroups that we have here in the district. Where are the areas that we need to target and how we're going to then move from that data to target those specific spaces. Part of what my learning is inside of this is then bringing it back to our district leadership team. From our district leadership team, engaging in those conversations around what are we going to do in terms of our goals and action plans, and most importantly, monitoring to ensure that we're meeting the expectations of those goals moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great answers. Next, we will hear a question from one of our CEC member, Eden Rubenstein.
Thanks, Wendy. So my question is, please describe your vision around working with community-based organizations in order to support decreasing chronic absenteeism and utilizing parents as a strategy to fulfill this vision.
Thank you, Eden. For this question, we will have Mr. Nantona to begin.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, Eden. Chronic absenteeism is certainly something that is not just a concern of District 25. It's a national concern. Been referred to as as the the new epidemic, so to speak, of what's going on in our school system, it causes a great deal of concern in terms of the progress of our kids. And things that I've shared often as I break down information is that there's a clear disparity between what's going on with our student learners and the relationship to chronic absenteeism. And we often see that there's a huge gap. So part of the work that we engage in and that I organize and believe in is the space of a CASE team, which is what we have across all of our district schools. The CASE team stands for Culture, Attendance, Social Emotional Learning. The expectation of that particular CASE team is to organize around the information that we gather on a routine basis in terms of attendance rate. Who are the children that are currently struggling with their attendance? And from that, how do we help support our families in ensuring that our kids are in school? And the reality to it is that there's no scenario that's alike. There's always a reason why a child may be out to the space of being chronically absent. So there's a couple of things that are important for me in this space. One, making sure that the message is loud and clear across our schools. That means messaging it during our Community Education Council meetings. That means messaging it during our President's Council meeting. That means messaging it during our district leadership team meetings where we're talking about improvement cycles. So things that are happening, and especially in relationship to our community-based organizations, is working in concert with to support programs that are either before or after school. So what you'll see our schools do based on the recommendations from our district team, and I'm fortunate that I do have a district attendance point that does connect with our schools and does connect with individual students to provide support. But part of that work is tapping into our kids, talking to them about around the things that they get really excited about. So what you'll see as an outgrowth of that is our recommendations from the district team and myself around, let's develop a sports program in the morning. Let's develop an arts program in the morning to make sure that our kids have something that they're really looking forward to attending. What you'll also see is outreach to families, talking to them about the things that may be preventing them from accessing school, and then offering them a remedy to that, which includes things like an early morning breakfast program, for our families, or an after school program because the families can't get their children, pick up their children after school. So it has a lot to do with that community-based approach in order to make sure that our kids are in school every day. Because what we do know is that when they're not in school, they're not learning at the level that is necessary for them to be successful. And, part of the conversations that we have with our community-based organizations is building that positive relationship. And I'm proud to say that our schools that do have those CBOs have those relationships where they're organizing those activities for our kids in concert with one another to raise the attendance rates of our students. Now, we have a long way to go when it comes to chronic absenteeism. We have seen a little bit of a roller coaster as the year has gone on, but we are now starting to see an elevated level of attendance at this point of the year, and hopefully meeting that expectation of a goal that we set of improving by a minimum of 4% across our targeted subgroups this year. And I attribute that to the measures that we've been putting forward as a district.
Thank you, Dr. D'Antona. Ms. Hernandez, if you need the question repeated, please let us know.
I'm okay, I remember it. Thank you, though. As far as chronic absenteeism, again, you want to do everything that you possibly can at the building level. The system that I use, multi-tiered support system, we would run attendance. This is where we comb through all the data, and attendance is part of that. So we would invite, the student into the meeting, if appropriate, the parent. I chair every single meeting currently as a sitting principal. I recommend that leaders get as involved as they can, whether it's something like the interim superintendent just mentioned, the CASE team. The leaders have to prioritize this work because chronic absenteeism is pattern behavior. If you look at a child that's chronically absent in middle school, chances were that they were chronically absent in elementary school. So the earlier the intervention, the better. you want to make sure that you meet with the parent, and it doesn't have to be in person. It can be via Zoom, on the telephone, but you want to make that personal connection to figure out the why. Have a social worker on board, a school counselor, because you oftentimes, right, we learn that it's their basic, it could be the family's basic need that's not being met. And that saying, you have to Maslow before you bloom. You know, our children will never be successful if they're, you know, they're displaced. Maybe their home life, they're in between homes. They could be in a foster care system. They possibly could be relying on the school system for their meals. We don't know, but we want to start with, are their basic needs being met? Do they feel physically safe at school? You know, we can't turn away from a bullying culture that can exist, especially in a middle school. So again, creating a anti-bullying curriculum or you know, dedicated SEL work has to be in place. You know, we have to figure out, does the child feel physically safe, emotionally safe? All of that has to be ironed out. Who their favorite teacher is, where are their pockets of success during the day when they do come to school? How do they belong? Do they feel invested in their school community? What club can they join? What sport can they play? These are all, you know, really game changers for kids when you look at the why. Sometimes it could come from the parenting, and that's where it's, you know, you know, it's a no judgment zone. You know, you have to say to the parent, listen, no judgment here. Tomorrow's a new day. I support you. What can we do? Sometimes it's after school care, before care. You're looking at how to support that family dynamic, and looking at the barrier and creating a SMART goal. And attendance sometimes can't be resolved overnight. So it's, you know, if you're chronically absent, which all you have to do is miss 1 or 2 days a month and you're considered chronically absent, can we decrease that? If you're missing 4 times a month and you go down to 2, we have to celebrate. We have to celebrate because that's progress. And I think, again, it's baby steps. And, you know, sometimes you get a quick turnaround and it's like, wow, but that's not usually the case. It's, you know, you have to crawl before you walk. It can take, you know, supporting the parent. Does the, you know, I've relied on outside agencies before that bring more structure to the home. That's one. I worked in the South Bronx. I partnered with East Side Settlement. They actually were housed, there was a CBO housed in the high school. And that was phenomenal because they had an actual budget with prizes that students could win. And if you increase your attendance, you get to go out on a field trip. All of that matters.
Thank you. At this time, I know our DPAC rep had joined us. Christopher Mitchell, he's here with us, and he has a question for the candidates. Mr. Mitchell, please unmute yourself and please give us your question.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Christopher Mitchell. I have a question for both candidates. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us so far. So my question is, how do you ensure that the district is meeting the needs of all students, including those with special needs from underrepresented backgrounds?
Thank you for this question, Ms. Hernandez. Please, you may begin.
I currently use a platform called EduClimber. It's a Renaissance program, and it's what my entire district uses. It's what my current superintendent believes in. And this platform allows us to disaggregate data and really identify disproportionality. So the EQ, the essential question is always who, okay, in terms of, it would be broken down by schools, but what student is not being served in this school? Who is the system not working for? That is the EQ. And you do this through data analysis. So EduClimber actually disaggregates the data. So if I want to see how English language learners are doing, and I can break it down by gender, I could break it down by socioeconomic, and I can identify courses, specific courses in the middle school that are called courses for concern, because they might have, 12% of the students struggling are students with IEPs, or 15% of students between 65 and 75 are students learning English. So it really allows you to disaggregate the data to a very specific level, and you're able to have those conversations that, again, are just direct. You have to have direct conversations in education because there's an urgency around this work, and you can't get to the all unless you take care of your most marginalized groups. So that's students of color, that's the LGBTQAI plus community, that is boys in education right now, just male students, right? There's a crisis in the country. So you want to take a close look at your most vulnerable populations, your multilingual learners, your students with IEPs, your students of color, and your students who are most likely to be bullied in your school. That's the most important data to look at. And again, flag. They become courses of concern, sit downs, deeper conversations. Is the educator, is that teacher even aware of how that data is breaking down? You have to know your class composition. It's where every discussion should be centered around that data. The composition of your class. Do you know your students on a deeper level? How are you purposefully grouping them? How are you closing that gap? Because it's real. And, I've worked with NYU Metro Tech Center for Equity. They're phenomenal. I have a vast network when it comes to the work that has to go into bringing equity into the school system. And it's my passion.
Thank you. Dr. D'Antona, do you need the questions repeated?
Yeah, Mr. Mitchell, if you can just one more time, just make sure I don't miss anything, that would be great.
Certainly. One moment, please. Okay, so here we are. How do you ensure that the district is meeting the needs of all students, including those with special needs or from underrepresented backgrounds?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mr. Mitchell. And one of the things that I challenge myself on, as well as our leaders, is really reflecting on the information that we have access to on a routine basis, and more importantly, making that information transparent to the entire community. So what you'll see me do on a routine basis when it comes to data is sharing that information widely. I share it at our CEC meetings, I'll share it at our President's Council meetings, and that data is then broken down into our targeted subgroups as a district. And the reason I do that is to serve as a model for our schools, so that they're taking that information from how it is that I organize at the CEC President's Council level and bringing it back to their schools. So I refer to it as a state of the district address. Schools will refer to it as a state of the school address. So they're bringing it back to their school leadership teams. They're bringing it back to their parents in during their PA meetings, so that they're all having conversations around the current state of progress as a school, and for us as a district team. So there are a lot of layers to this. So from that information, it's then how are we organizing ourselves to support learning? So a couple of the decisions that we made this year and moving forward were to, in fact, support some of our most needy of populations. And that includes an adjustment to our curriculum. One of the things that we recognize is that we do have achievement gaps inside of here in District 25. And the goal is to help reduce some of those gaps by everyone working on a uniform curriculum across all of our schools, so that our conversations are consistent around not only the instruction from the lessons that they're delivering, but also about how are kids in fact performing inside of our buildings. So where does that bring me to? It brings me to the space, and again, alignment to our our vision around growing as one community. It's about then having principal professional learning teams across our district. Those principal professional learning teams are organized based on school level data in two areas. One, instructional practice, but two, around the students that are falling out of that, beyond that sphere of success, with the goal of helping supporting our classroom teachers so that by proxy can help support learning for our students. The goal of that is to serve as a model for teacher teams across our schools. So every single building in District 25 we have an expectation that every school has an instructional leadership equity team. The goal of this instructional leadership equity team is to organize themselves around a problem of practice focused on a particular targeted subgroup. In District 25, those subgroups are particularly our English language learners. And depending on the school, you may see our Hispanic learners identified. You may see our Black learners identified. But so it won't be the same in every school because every school population is different. But what we do arm our schools with is the information that's necessary for them to make decisions. Looking at targeted subgroups, I think is an important step, but we go beyond the looking at that information. It's how do we start action planning to help support those specific needs? So what you'll see our schools do based on expectations that we set is then organize around multi-tiered systems of support. Who are the children inside of our targeted groups that are receiving that core instruction in our classrooms? That's where it must start. Tier 1 core instruction is the first and most important place. If we're not seeing that progress inside of our small group instruction, then it's about what are the interventions that we're offering across our schools in both Tier 2 and Tier 3. And what you'll see all of our schools do, based on information that I also come armed with, is really dig into those individual kids during school visits.
Thank you both.
Thank you. At this time, I will take a question from the Q&A. To all the families tonight, if you have questions for the candidates, please put your questions in the Q&A, and I will read the questions from the Q&A as we go. If there are no questions in the Q&A, we will continue with questions from the CEC members. So the first Q&A questions from the public is, in what ways will you celebrate cultural diversity and promote inclusion in the district? And for this question, Dr. D'Antona, please, you may go first. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a super important one. Certainly here in District 25, we have a very diverse district community, and one of which ranges in terms of cultural background. So a couple of things that just starting from the space of instruction, because I think that's where all of our work does need to help build in terms of that space of appreciation. Are inside of our programs. The reason why we went into the into reading and into literature space was because of the range of text that's accessible within the program to help celebrate the children that are within our district community. So that our children have an opportunity to see themselves in the books that they're getting to read. So first and foremost, inside of that instructional space and our curriculum was making sure that our program offered opportunities for our kids to read text that connects to them. That's one of the most important components of our work. Another part of that space is making sure that we have a space to grow in terms of our social emotional learning component within our curriculum. As part of that work, we went into the space of Mind Up. And Mind Up is built around the core competencies of social emotional learning, where we're really promoting that space of self-awareness, that space of self-management, that space of decision-making, and the space of responsible of relationship building. And you can't really organize ourselves around celebrating and appreciating those around us if we're not learning how to go ahead and do that as children. From pre-K from 3K all the way through grade 8, our kids need to learn what those behaviors look like, sound like, and feel like. So as part of our school expectations, all schools in District 25 are implementing this social emotional learning program to help build those competencies in our kids, so that they are better able, to build those relationships with one another. In addition, what you'll see here in District 25 and what we do frequently during our CEC meetings, our President's Council meetings, is that I will offer a report for myself. And inside of that report, what you will wind up seeing is connections to the cultures of our district, celebrations of the things that we see across our district community during events and activities during Hispanic Heritage Month, during our Lunar New Year, during Asian Pacific Islanders Month, which we'll see during our next newsletter that we send out on a routine basis. Because part of this is making sure that the information doesn't stay just with an individual person. It's how do we make sure that that information across all of our schools is transparent, so that we know that we value each other for who we are as individuals. And part of that work is also going to be things that we start rolling out moving forward with our Chancellor's initiative, with new curriculum that's come out for AAPI and such. So the goal of us as a district is really promoting those expectations across our school. And part of that is through the outreach that I get to and our team gets to connect with our schools on, as we gather information around the things that they're doing every single month to connect with the kids and the staff and the families within our schools.
Thank you, Dr. Mike.
Sure.
Ms. Hernandez, do you need the questions repeated?
Yes, I would like the question repeated.
Okay. In what ways will you celebrate cultural diversity and promote inclusion in the district?
So first and foremost, the cultures that are representative of the student bodies in the schools need to be reflected. So upon entrance into a school, you should see the languages reflected. I'm talking about art. You know, if I'm coming into a school that has a Mandarin population, a Latino population, a white population, how do I know that? I should know that as soon as I go through the doors. The students should be represented. I think art is wonderful. I think, again, through the curriculum is necessary. A great way to have a shared school culture is around reading. So maybe having a summer book talk activity where students have a choice of books they can read, or if they want to read them all, but they tie into an overarching theme, such as embracing differences. And that is a recurring call to action throughout a school year. So, you know, it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to live it and revisit it. And again, tying instruction back to embracing differences through different curriculum. I'm thinking about SEL curriculums that are out there. You guys are already invested in one. But again, that work to strengthen peer-to-peer relationships is key. Because due to the developmental age of whether you're in pre-K or in grade 8, it can be an age where students are impulsive in what they do and what they say. So they need to build those skills, and we have to be intentional about that. Again, it goes back to relationship building, being intentional about that in the classroom, in the hallways. The Dignity Act is a huge piece. Are students educated on DASA? You know, are we proactive? Is every school messaging the same, those protected categories, right? That are, it's state, it's federal law. You cannot come at anyone's identity, who they are, race, religion, color, creed, the language that they speak, their weight, their socioeconomic class. This is all education that has to be delivered, not just to students, but to parents at home. I find that social emotional curriculums, especially when they exist pre-K to 8, they afford the opportunity for parents to share common language at home with siblings. So even looking at, you know, again, intentional work so that it can carry over to the home, that the families are part of the work, that they see the schools as partners, right? We never want to overstep. They have the primary role. They are the parents. But we are all in this together. again, through curriculum, social studies is a great content area. Facing history, you can weave in the cultures that exist in your school, the biases. What are we doing to work on those biases and those thoughts that automatically come into our head when we see people? How are we breaking through that? And yeah, I would say, students leading cultural presentations is another big one. Getting the students that share a cultural background together on their month and having them be part of the presentation to their peers. That works amazing. I've seen it in plenty of elementary and middle schools. And, again, you can pull in great cultural performances, whether it be for Hispanic Heritage, the Lunar New Year, Asian Pacific Islander Month, Black History Month, whatever it be. You can bring in some great hidden cultural presentations, but on hidden figures, right? Everybody's used to learning about Martin Luther King. They want to learn about the hidden figures in their culture, whether it be, ran out of time, but I could go on and on.
Thank you so much. It's great to see the candidates' enthusiasm in their answers. It's very engaging. Thank you both. So we have a question from CEC member, Mr. Joseph Chow.
Hello, good evening. My question is, hold on, let me get my question. Please address how you would support multilingual learners in District 25.
For this questions, Ms. Hernandez, if you don't mind, you go first.
So as the external candidate, and I'm going to frame my answer that way, the first thing I would want to see is the data in the districts and what the MLL populations are in District 25. I have an idea because I've been studying your district for quite a while. But the first thing is that you want to make sure that your schools are in compliance with Part 154. And that's the New York State guidance on how to meet the needs of English language learners or multilingual learners. And again, that goes, you have to understand the dynamic of the school. So for example, if there are 20 or more students in one grade that share a common language, you now have to offer a transitional bilingual education program. So you want to make sure that your schools that have if they have a one-way dual language, what's their why? Do they plan on opening a two-way? What's their why? Or what's the need? What does the community want? The TBE program, right? Where the student should have, especially at the secondary level in middle school, 2 content areas in their home language, and they should be strengthening their home language because we know that there's a science behind translanguaging. So if I'm a student and my first language is Chinese, right? The studies already show that it's going to take me somewhere between 5 and 7 years to master my new language. So along the way, I don't want to, the content should not be sacrificed because, studies show that full assimilation, launching a child into English before they're ready, actually does a lot of psychological harm to the home culture of the student. You want to make sure that that student is bicultural and bilingual and is embraced for both languages. And all of our MLLs need to have the permission. Okay, it needs to be a school-wide thinking in every school in District 25, that they have permission to use whatever language they want. Sometimes it's a blend. With Latinos, it's called Spanglish. That's just translanguaging. You are drawing from your repertoire, your linguistic repertoire that's so vast. Also, branding, being bilingual or trilingual is a superpower. So we have to start, again, that student, while their identity is forming, it should not be something they're ashamed of. Their language is not something that they want to hide. Oh no, I want to just speak English. No, that they're seen as having that advantage, right? How many more people do they get to talk to in this global world, right? So when we think about a global learner and the opportunities they have, especially if they're able to speak English and Chinese, or English, Spanish and Chinese, or English and Spanish, how many more people are they able to communicate to? What jobs opportunities are they going to have that a monolingual child is not going to have? And that needs to be fully embraced and met through the Part 154 minutes and support that all MLLs are entitled to, whether it's met by support pushing in, a dual language program, a TBE program, or some sort of hybrid. But we're always looking to strengthen the home language at the same time. We don't want to ever lose that.
Thank you. Dr. Dantona, do you need the questions repeated?
Oh, no, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, and I agree with Christian that the supports for our Ls is so super important, and native language support is essential for for our kids. When I think about our Ls and our Ls over the course of time, it's been a subgroup that will continue to be part of our work. One of the things about our district community is even as we test children out, we get brand new English language learners right into our district, to a space of, for our kids in grades 3 through 8, upwards of over 1,700 children that are within their first 2 years of service. So what does that mean? That means, in terms of our support as a district, that whether you are, no matter who you are in District 25, if you're a teacher in D25, you are a teacher of Ls. This is not a reliance on our our teachers that have an ENL license. This is about all of our teachers being mindful that we have children with language needs inside of our classrooms. So how do we support that? We support that through the space of ensuring that our teachers have access to tools to support their needs. Sometimes the programs that we use offer some of those elements that allow us to see, here are some instructional supports that you can use to build access for our most needy of learners, but they're often not enough in terms of support for our multilingual learners. So for us, it's been around organizing professional learning opportunities for our district in the form of our dual language teachers, our TBE teachers, coming together into a space where they do a couple of things, including the translation of documents into other languages, primarily our Chinese-speaking classrooms, as text is not always as prevalent for them as it is for our Spanish-speaking students. So a lot of that work is coming together, working collaboratively as a team to ensure that the supports inside of our, especially in our dual language and TBE classrooms, is accessible to our kids to help build not only that native language, but also to help build the English language support for our learners. Also, it's about scheduling. So Christian mentioned the idea of Part 154, and I think it's important in terms of how we allocating time and space inside of standalone support. When our children come in pre-K and kindergarten, it's different access points than when they come to us in grades 3, 4, 5, and all the way through grade 8, as the needs are different. Children in kindergarten absorb that language at a different rate than our children that are in grades 3 and up. So for what it means for us as a district team is really thinking very strategically around two things. One, how are we building those foundational literacy skills for our kids, particularly those that are coming to us in those upper grades? Because oftentimes our curricula programs do not include those spaces for an entering child inside of the classroom. So for us, it's about how do we build some of those foundational pieces while also building their academic language so that we can accelerate those opportunities for learning. Because one of the realities is that our children are going to learn basic language with or without us inside of a school system. What they will not learn is the academic language necessary for them to read complex pieces of text, which is going to be in front of them every single day. So what we are responsible for and what we are building towards in District 25 is incorporating those skills and strategies and scaffolds to make sure that language comes alive for our kids, whether that's through native language support or making sure that all of our things are accompanied with frames and visual representations for our kids to have more access.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Okay. So our CEC member, John Stewart, will read the next question from the Q&A. John?
Thanks, Wendy. The gifted and talented admission process has seen multiple changes in the last couple of years and may require additional revisions. So 2 questions really. What, if anything, would you do to change the G&T admission process? And following up on that, how do you plan to support high achieving students who don't get into the G&T program?
For these questions, Dr. Mike, you may go first.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. You know, so the gifted and talented process, and in terms of the development of additional courses or who gets involved, you know, who gets to be accepted inside of that is a process that goes beyond the space of the district in terms of organization. Certainly, advocating for our kids to have access to accelerated types of programs is something that we do here in District 25. So while we do lean in on the gifted programs that we have here in district, but the goal of our work is to really promote the access to Regents level coursework for our kids by the time they get into grade 8. So while in middle school, we won't necessarily call on them as being in a G&T class, but we are calling on them in the space of promoting opportunities for acceleration for our learners. And is looked at in a couple of different ways. So what we've challenged our schools on this year and in previous years in particular is this idea of promoting Regents readiness and that access for higher level coursework by the time our kids get into 8th grade, and then so that they're accelerated and ready to go into high school. So part of our work as a district community is really about organizing our systems of MTSS so that we can increase the number of children that have access to this higher level of coursework inside of our schools. And because of that, our schools have an opportunity, and our students have an opportunity for that matter, to engage in courses that range from our Algebra 1 Regents in grade 8, our Living Environment Regents, our Earth Science Regents, US History Regents across our 8th grade middle school life, which provides an opportunity for kids here in District 25 to access that new work. In addition to that space, part of our responsibility is to offer opportunities for our kids to engage in enrichment-based activities. So what our schools will do and do offer are opportunities for our kids to use that voice to promote space for various clubs, whether it's around coding or Lego robotics or spaces like Minecraft, which we have a series of our schools that just engage in a competition across New York City, 5 of which are in the semifinals, for this work, all about promoting critical thinking and problem solving, so that our kids have access to content that promotes that space of enrichment across our schools.
Thank you, Dr. Mike.
Sure.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, I'm going to echo Dr. Mike that to my knowledge, the gifted and talented admission process is a citywide system. But what I will say is that I believe all schools should have high expectations for all. And while I do believe a gifted and talented program should exist, and there are many communities that fought when that was kind of under scrutiny during one of the last chancellors, I do believe it serves a purpose. There are students who need the rigor and need to be challenged, and they will go on to careers in science and math that require that rigor. But I do feel, again, differentiation, it goes back to highly effective teaching. Just like teachers need to differentiate the lesson plan for a student with an IEP or a multilingual learner. They also need to differentiate up. So again, you can increase the rigor of the same lesson plan. So I can use a platform called Newsella, right? And I can bring up the Lexile level of a reading and bring it down for another group and then bring it down and meet the students where they're at. So you can still, in the same lesson plan, meet the needs of those students who need to read at a higher level, who need to critically think, you know, at a very high level, or who need the enrichment in math. You can build in extra problems or create your own problem for a future exam. You can get those students that finish work quickly because they're naturally very bright in a certain content area. You can enrich their experience in the same classroom. Something I was thinking about is, you know, especially in 8th grade, is civics leading to the seal of civic readiness. Language courses where students can accrue high school credit, right, in a Spanish one or a Chinese one or you know, a bilingual, a home language arts class. They can leave middle school with geometry, algebra, language, civics, Olympics for visual arts. You can give them experiences in financial literacy, in computer science, in STEAM. One of the courses in my middle school that I implemented as a principal is called Mix Inc. EDU, and it's a Shark Tank-like experience where students it's centered around project-based learning, but they're creating a prototype of a product that they can launch, and they can actually pitch this, and they can actually win investors. In my district, Brewster High School came in 3rd place in Chicago. They launched their own deodorant for athletes. It was invested in. It came in 3rd place, and they were given $5,000 to create more deodorant sticks, and they are selling. So, you know, again, real world experience through career technical education, positioning all these courses as what's going to be needed for post-secondary success. It's authentic learning. So yeah, you know, there are those advanced courses where I'm going to learn the content and I'm going to memorize it and I'm going to regurgitate it and I'm going to pass a test. But how much of that is really retained? You want students to have rich experiences using their mind, their hands, their creativity while they're young. You never know what that will lead to, and the more that we you know, position District 25 or schools across the country in that way, the prestige is soon to be attached to these newer innovative courses, because that is where the future lies.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Okay, at this time, I want to ask the interpreters whether there are questions that came in that you received from the communities or families. Please let us know.
Spanish line, no questions.
Okay. Ms. Shi Fang.
This is the Mandarin interpreter speaking. There is no question on the Mandarin line.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then we will move to the next CEC member, Bob Wazor.
Great, thank you, Wendy. I appreciate it. Question for, I'm going to ask the candidates is, there's been a lot of very good questions about things that they would do. Unfortunately, things are not always positive, and some things require remedial action. So if you were encountering a situation where there was some form of discrimination that you were witnessing in the school, whether that was from a group or to another group, how would you address that and diffuse the situation or the conflict within the school?
Question, Ms. Hernandez, you may begin.
Thank you. So with anything discrimination, and again, I'm thinking as a superintendent here, I would want to always act as a thought partner to the leader or the building facing this this very unfortunate challenge. And I say this because it has to be addressed through the lens of DASA and the Dignity Act. So it would immediately be an investigation under DASA, those protected categories, and that is a very, very scripted way of going through an investigation. And from that investigation, it will either lead you to, is this a Title IX now? Is this a Title VI? I mean, you're dotting your I's and you're crossing your T's. And you also have to come up with an action plan, not just on the level of the students or families that could be facing it, but what are you going to do school-wide to show that you are taking this seriously? So that could be a school-wide assembly with communication to families. That could be as big as a town hall meeting. It depends on what occurred and how many people are impacted by the discrimination. But you want to take a stance, right, that we don't stand for any type of discrimination. Again, the emotional and physical safety of our students is priority number one, right? Safety is always first. So again, I would guide the leader to go through the lens of DASA and walk them through that process. Having done that as an assistant principal and a sitting principal, I've seen things, I've been in town hall meetings where they can be full of anger in a community. And, it has led to work with engaging families. What are we going to do about this as a community? So, and I'll give you an example. If the N word is used, schools are not teaching students to say that. So how do we go about that as a community? What is needed? Who can we partner with? And, I've lived through that in many different situations, and it has been as, granular as a DASA investigation in a school assembly, and it's been as grand as a town hall meeting, followed by a partnership with NYU Metro Center Tech for Equity, involving families and involving panorama surveys and really looking at the climate and culture and creating a district-wide climate and culture team where families were telling their stories. And storytelling is so powerful because we know that unfortunately, some of what happens in our schools is a microcosm of what's happening around the country as the demographics shift rapidly and the face of what it means to be an American is changing. So it's deep work, but again, it would be start with DASA and the Dignity Act and the law.
Thank you. Dr. Dantona, do you need the question repeated?
Oh, no, I think I'm okay. Yeah, and this is an important question, and I think for any circumstance, and there are varying degrees to the level to which this type of an occurrence will involve additional remedies. But first and foremost, there is an expectation around reporting. The reporting system as part of the Department of Education is something that all schools must do right off the bat, is making sure that that we have things appropriately reported and then, more importantly, investigated to provide those additional supports. From the district level, we're fortunate enough to have a student services team that includes a student services manager that I would organize opportunity to deploy to the school to really help support the school in assessing what the current circumstance is. If it was inappropriate language, and it's something that we can address at the at the student level, then we go ahead and organize an action plan as part of individual service, individual support plans for kids. So anytime there's an incident inside of a school, dependent on the severity of the particular case, either side of those two spaces, whether it was the accused or the victim, there's an opportunity for an individualized support plan for children to be developed. And this is a key component to this work, because absent that individual support plan, we're not really remedying the situation. It just becomes something that we've reported, we've investigated, put a determination on it, and then not necessarily follow up. The follow-up support is really essential. And part of our work here at the district office is having those systems, so all of those I's are dotted, T's are crossed, to support our kids inside of our schools, to ensure that anything that is discriminatory is addressed. Now, depending on who is engaging in that discrimination, it takes on different levels. So if it's a space of an educator that is engaging in discriminatory behavior, it's not necessarily the same as student-to-student types of behavior, which would involve additional reporting and, of course, additional investigating that's necessary to support next steps. Also, as part of this, we're fortunate that we have a borough safety director. So any of these things that do come up as part of this of scenarios like this, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that all voices are engaged in this process, so that we're developing an action plan that's going to support a positive outcome for the community. And that will vary from case to case. Certainly, if it's a pervasive scenario, then it's about looking much more deeply than a given set of words that a child may have said at a given time. If we're starting to see this, and this is consistent across a given school, it runs the risk of becoming an even greater issue that goes beyond the space of even the school. Suddenly news outlets wind up having access to it, when it could have been supported right from the very, very beginning through lessons inside of our classrooms, assemblies where we're promoting space like resources from the Anti-Defamation League. How are we bringing in components of additional partnerships to support scenarios where we do need additional intervention? Many times we are very fortunate that, given the space of leadership that we have with our principals, concert with our student services manager, that we're able to, and our school counselors for that matter, we're able to organize in a way that the plans that they've established inside of during the school year, and their school counseling plans, their crisis plans, they're all organized to support scenarios like this, so that they do not escalate beyond an initial phase of discriminatory, an alleged discrimination.
Thank you, Dr. D'Antona.
Sure.
Ms. Hernandez? Okay. So at this time, there is a question from the Q&A. The question is, how do you plan to support teachers who are anxious and unsure implementing new curriculum while being rated on the Danielson framework? Dr. D'Antona, please begin.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and it's one that we've just lived for this entire school year, where that's in fact what has happened. You've had to implement a new program, while also, unfortunately having to be in a space where you have to receive ratings at the same time. Part of my role inside of this work as the year has gone on is to make sure that I'm getting voice out there, whether it's through our AP +1 meetings or our L meetings, our middle school meetings. Anytime I'm meeting with teachers, it's about creating that opportunity for them to understand that I also understand where it is that they are as an educator unpacking new curriculum at the same time. So for me, it's about providing the supports to provide access to teachers to be successful inside of the work that they're doing. So one of the decisions that I think was important, as we were rolling out a new curriculum, was to organize tools to provide to our teachers to give them more access to feel more comfortable. So when we began our work with rolling out this new curriculum this year, one of the decisions that we made was to organize unit plans, these unit maps, these learning maps for our schools, so that we were able to help our teachers organize around the essential learnings that were part of a given lesson, to support the different scaffolds that were present inside of the lesson. Where is it that you find the text and the resources? To provide opportunities for our teachers to feel more comfortable inside of that space. One of the other things that we've been doing is opening up, and thanks to our teachers in District 25 for opening up their classrooms for us to learn in a space that the goal of that was not to serve as an evaluative space of our work, but more of a space of learning. So when teachers come into each other's classrooms with a focus on the essential elements of our reading program, with the idea that we're coming in solely to support improved outcomes for ourselves as teachers, but for kids, it's about building a culture where it's okay for us to learn through a program, because it's about that support and not necessarily the evaluation. Now, one thing I cannot do is tell a teacher that I'm sorry because we're implementing a new program that we can't engage in ratings. Unfortunately, ratings is part of the process, so we do have to do that. But we have encouraged our building leaders to do, especially at the beginning part of the year, was to engage in instructional walkthroughs that were non-evaluative, non-judgmental, in a space where we were promoting the opportunity for our teachers to receive feedback that was not necessarily equated to a rating, allowing our folks to have a little bit of that space, space and grace for that matter, to grow into this work. At the beginning of the school year, we were probably in November, and I did engage our whole community in a town hall, so to speak, where I invited all 2,000 plus teachers that we have here in the district to hear me kind of talk to the importance of knowing that I know the work that they're doing, and that it's okay to engage in this work, and do their best through it, and we'll be there to support them, because that's ultimately our role. We're as good as the teachers that are in front of our classrooms, and we have to be responsible for providing the supports for them to be as successful as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Ms. Hernandez, do you need the questions repeated?
No, thank you. I'm going to sound like I'm piggybacking off of Dr. Mike a bit, but the support for new teachers, it's always about the culture of risk-taking and saying, you know what, this is a new curriculum, we're all learning together, and setting that, reducing or diminishing that anxiety that's natural to feel with any change. What I often tell teachers, because I'm in a principal seat and I've lived this year, rolling out Open SciEd for the next generation science standards. And the curriculum that we landed on after a vetted curricular review process created a lot of anxiety. And I had to work closely with those teachers and remind them that, your pedagogy pedagogy will still shine through. You're a good teacher. So if you hit some bumps in the road, you're still going to show off your pre-planned questioning techniques. You're still going to attempt to engage students in rich discussion. You're still going to plan these awesome opportunities for students to collaborate and learn from one another. So if something is off, because that curriculum is new and unfamiliar, that's to be expected. And we're going to capture your ability to reflect under domain 4. We're going to capture your risk-taking, getting out of your comfort zone. We're going to document all of that. So, and that completely, I would give that advice to any principal that I was ever thought partnering with. You want to play up the positive. You want to feed the positive. The positive to implementing a new curriculum is that teacher's taking risk, and that teacher is going to be in self-reflection mode more than ever, because they're going to replay the lesson in the way, what went well, what didn't, what do I need to shift to make it better. And by year 2 and 3, it's you can see a huge difference, but they have to be authorized to go through that process in a supportive way from from principals and APs through the APPR process. And again, professional learning. So I know that you all have rolled out HMH, and I'm sure that comes with professional learning workshops from those consultants. And you know, layering that support between the professional learning, new teachers typically get mentors or they belong to a new teacher academy. Some of them are still or in the midst of their graduate work. They've got networks out there. And again, just reassurance is key when supporting new teachers with new curriculum.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. I would like to ask the interpreters again whether there are any questions from the Spanish and Mandarin speaking families. Liliana?
¿Alguna pregunta de los padres para el panel que está presentando? No questions on the Spanish line.
Thank you, Julia.
Yes.
各位家长有没有任何问题？
Oh, thank you, Sophia.
No question from the Mandarin line.
Thank you, Sophia. So before we conclude the question portion of this town hall, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give their closing statement. And whatever you would like the public to know about you, here's your chance. So I will start with Ms. Hernandez.
I first and foremost want to thank the CEC and those of you who are here from District 25, any community members that are listening tonight. As the external candidate, I realize that I may not be as familiar with the systems in place. However, what I do know is that I believe in my transference of the skill set that I honed. Having been a New York City public school teacher for 15 years and a dean of students, I do remember some of the systems very well, like the ORS reporting system and the jargon that exists in New York City overall. I can talk the talk. But what I will say that's most important to me is that you know that I come into this process humble. I realize you have an awesome deputy superintendent that's been there for many, many years, and he's sitting in the interim seat. And I want to give him his credit because he surely has paid his dues. But I will say that I will offer you wholeheartedly my 100% dedication to listen. I think listening whenever you're coming into a system is critical. Hearing from all stakeholders, and most importantly, our students. I'm committed to students. I'm a child-centered leader, and I believe that between my lived experience and my professional journey, I would make an excellent leader in District 25. I would see every single child.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Dr. Dantona?
Yeah, thank you so much, CEC, President's Council, DPAC, all of our community members, and Christian, thank you so much for for being part of this with me. I know it's certainly, at least I speak for myself, an interesting process, but I appreciate your leadership and learning from you in this space as well. I've been in District 25. This is my 9th year. Between myself, between a deputy role and now this interim acting role. And, one of the things that I've hoped that has come through certainly to the community is that you're going to get someone who really cares about the community, cares about the kids, cares about our families, cares about our staff, and cares deeply about our administrators as well. We've worked very hard to build a really, really positive culture here in District 25. And that comes from this space that I truly believe is about, and what I'm about is this ongoing space of learning. I'm never going to tell you that I know everything, but I will tell you that I'm going to work hard to figure things out. And in District 25, not unlike almost every district that we can think of across New York City, New York State, and the country, there's always things to work on. Even when we feel like we're doing a pretty good job, one of the things that you'll hear me say is, okay, but let's celebrate that for a little bit. Let's be excited about that for a little bit. But we also have other work to do. We have kids that need us to make decisions that are going to support their ability to read and read well by the time they get into third grade. That we're creating a space of acceleration so that our kids are prepared and ready for high school and beyond. And to me, that's my drive. That's what I'm here for. And looking forward to hopefully continue the journey.
Thank you, Dr. Dantona. And thank you, Ms. Hernandez, for joining us tonight. We will be moving into our comments and feedback portion of the town hall. I respectfully ask you to leave the meeting, leave the town hall. Thank you. And
have a wonderful night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
For the rest of you that's still on, please stay on. We do want your feedback and your comments. Okay. The purpose of this evening meeting is after soliciting feedback from past CEC presidents and presidents council, the Division of School Leadership created a process that included the voices of the parents and community members when hiring the superintendent. So our voices and feedback are important and an integral contribution in this process. We do not take this process lightly, as these leaders, the superintendents, have a direct impact on how our schools operate, how parents' concerns are addressed, and how we achieve the educational goals for our children. So we appreciate you joining us this evening and extending your patience and understanding during this entire process. At this time, if you have any comments, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. For the interpreters, are there any comments or feedback?
Not from the Mandarin line.
No comments from the Spanish line either.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or feedback from any CEC members? Catherine?
Hi, Wendy. I just wanted to say that I thought that tonight went really well, and they provided a lot of really great information, the candidates. And I think that any time that you have two candidates, that one has already achieved his doctoral degree and you have a second one who is in the process of completing her doctoral degree, that really shows a love of lifelong learning. And I think that that is something that passes along into the schools, and it's great to have leaders with that type of passion who continue to pursue their own education even as adults. So I think that they both did a really great job tonight, and I was happy to hear what they had to say.
Thank you, Catherine.
I'll just add very, very briefly that I think we're fortunate to have two very qualified people that bring a wealth of experience to bear for the benefit of our children. And so I'm thrilled that we have two very strong candidates for the position.
Yes, I agree with you as well. So at this time, it is, I know it's getting late, it's 8:43 p.m. If there are no other comments or feedback, I thank you to the CEC members, to President's Council and the DPAC, of course, our families, parents that joined us tonight. We appreciate your time in listening into this town hall. We hope that you learned something from each candidate. Next week on Wednesday, May 15th, there will be C37 presentation. The district will send out flyers, so you may register for the event. Thank you all for your time this evening, and I hope everyone will have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
The
night.
recording has
Thank
stopped.
you.
Thanks a lot, Wendy.
Thank you.